like when I taught middle school, like I was sending out now it's like I was burned out. I was very tired. It was a long. So I was like, I don't feel like I was fighting
Okay. Dora.
Well, Dora's there.
So right here.
Oh, yeah. We can do that. I know. Everybody was so hard. If I take notes, I forget.
Yeah, just mirror. That's okay. I checked it out. But actually,
I don't know, I'm trying to helping us like and like I'm a hand so many stuff. Maybe you should clean that one. Yeah, but I want to And then I think I go
If you want to raise your hand, so we know that if there's a space open right next to you, there's a lot of people that are still waiting to come in. Okay, thank you.
This one's taken? Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. An hour.
Welcome, everyone. We have a few more coming in, and let's get started.
Hey, there's two right there, sorry.
Have a few housekeeping items. Please remember that you're wearing masks. Please do so appropriately, over the nose, over the mouth. If you have any COVID symptoms, please go home and let your program manager know. After each presentation, everybody, we ask that you leave the room and check in again. So even if you're going to stay in this room, exit and check back in. Now to introduce Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben Schilaty works as an honor code administrator and adjunct professor at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. He holds 3 degrees from BYU, a bachelor's degree in Latin American Studies, a master's in Hispanic Linguistics, and a master's in social work. He also earned a Ph.D. in second language acquisition and teaching from the University of Arizona. Ben learned Spanish and Portuguese during his mission in Chihuahua, Mexico, and when he lived in Bolivia, Peru, and Portugal. He put his language abilities to good use by teaching Spanish for a decade at middle school, high school, and college levels. In 2015, Ben began blogging about his experiences as a gay Latter-day Saint. During his time in Arizona, he created a support community for LGBTQ Latter-day Saints in the Tucson area. He co-hosts the podcast, Questions from the Closet, with his friend Charlie Bird, and is the author of A Walk in My Shoes, Questions I'm Often Asked as a Gay Latter-day Saint. Please welcome Dr. Ben Schilaty.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I have Ben Schilaty, Ph.D. on there because I have one. I once gave a presentation that made me take it off, not the Ph.D., not anything else, because I don't. My Ph.D. isn't in counseling psychology. It's not in mental health. It's in second language acquisition and teaching. So if you want to learn how to learn Spanish, I'm also really good at talking about that. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. I'm going to use this handheld mic because I was a little too tall for the lectern mic. I just want to give you kind of like a foot in the door into LGBTQ issues and maybe increase your understanding just a little bit, and then give you some resources for where you can take it from here. So this isn't going to be comprehensive. I mean, LGBTQ issues, people have written a series of books on these topics. So I first of all want you to think about your sphere of influence. You know, what can you do to help yourself as far as understanding LGBTQ issues? And then expanding self, what can you do to help your family and friends, those in your immediate sphere, to understand LGBTQ issues? Also in your work environment, what can you do in your work environment to help people understand LGBTQ issues? And then after that, your community. What are the needs in your community, in your sphere of influence? What can you do to make a positive impact? And then finally, in our society, what are some things that you can do in the society that you belong to help increase understanding of LGBTQ issues and topics? Okay. So I just want to start with a couple definitions that people often aren't aware of. These come from the NCAA. They have a great dictionary of LGBTQ related issues. So I just pulled off three that I thought were more nebulous and one that I think would be helpful for all of you to understand. The first is cisgender. And cisgender is an adjective that describes someone who was assigned a gender at birth and they self-identify as that gender. So when I was born, I was assigned male at birth and I identify as male. So I'm cisgender. The contrast to cisgender would be transgender, so someone who's assigned a gender at birth but then identifies as a different gender or as a gender. Also the term queer. The term queer is an umbrella term for someone who isn't straight. And a lot of times these days, younger people especially will identify as queer because they don't want to add on so many labels. The opposite is the younger generation will add on tons and tons of labels. So we'll see how that works as well. And also the term ally. So I'm just going to read the definition here. It says, an ally is a person who is not a member of a targeted social group who takes action or speaks up to challenge discrimination or prejudice against a targeted social group. For example, straight allies speak and act against LGBTQ discrimination and prejudice, or white allies speak and act against discrimination against people of color. So I want you all to think, who aren't part of the LGBTQ community, what you can do to be allies as we talk today. So just so we have a base understanding, this is the gender-bred person. And the gender-bred person helps us understand this complex LGBTQ world. All right, so here we have gender expression, we have gender identity, gender attraction, and biological sex. So if you look at these, each of these are on a continuum. So if we look at the top, gender identity is how someone identifies. This is a mental thing, an internal thing. And you can see that someone can be on the scale of womanness or manness, or have no gender identity at all. They could be agender or non-binary. And then someone could be on that continuum as well. Someone could identify more as male, but also partly as female as well. And then gender expression. Gender expression has nothing to do with how we feel internally, but just how we express our gender. A good example of this might be, if any of you watched It's Always Extraordinary Playlist, the character Mo, who identifies as male but presents as female, and is an amazing singer. And then biological sex. Once again, this is on a continuum. Now, the majority of people fall very clearly into male or female categories, biologically speaking. but there are also a wide variety of intersex conditions where someone biologically isn't fully male or fully female. And then when we have sexual attraction and romantic attraction, once again, someone can be exclusively attracted to women, exclusively attracted to men, somewhere on a continuum attracted to both genders, or not attracted to anyone. And then same with romantic attraction. Someone could be exclusively romantically attracted to one gender, or attracted to both, or not attracted to either. And those things can change as well. You'll experience people who will be very specific about their identities. And so they'll say something like, I'm pansexual, aromantic, meaning that they are sexually attracted to anyone, but not romantically attracted to anybody. Or that they might define as homoromantic, but asexual, meaning that they're romantically attracted to men or people of the same sex, but not sexually attracted to anybody. So you'll find a wide continuum on all these things. And so it's important that we understand these definitions when we're interacting with clients and just people in our lives in general. All right, so I'm going to share a lot of personal stories, just so you can see things from a personal perspective. And once again, I'm just talking for me and my experience, but just to help you understand a little bit of how these issues can affect people's lives. So I grew up in the Seattle area. I had a very normal growing up life there, and I first realized that I was attracted to other guys when I was about 11 years old, when I hit puberty. And this wasn't super distressing to me. This was in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, and even then in society, being LGBTQ wasn't really accepted. And so I lived in a state of denial for my entire teenage years of my adolescence. And so what I would tell myself is I wasn't really attracted to guys, I just wished I looked like them. Because I wasn't very athletic or what you might call conventionally attractive. And I would see people who were athletic and were conventionally attractive. And I thought, well, I really want to be like them. I like to look at them because I wish I could look like them. But that was just a way that I was living in denial and trying to brush away what was going on. I assumed it was a phase and it would go away. I have a picture here of me going to prom because I dated women when I was in high school, because that's what I was supposed to do. A lot of people will say, or will ask me, can someone be like influenced to be gay? Can someone be recruited to the LGBTQ world? And what I tell people is I was recruited to the straight world. My society told me to be straight, my family told me to be straight, my religion told me to be straight. I acted straight. I didn't date guys or kiss guys or anything like that. I did all that with women. I even prayed to be straight and did everything I could to be straight, and it didn't work. And so if the straight world could try and recruit me that hard and couldn't get even me, the LGBTQ world isn't going to be able to recruit anyone either. When I was 23 years old, I was attending Brigham Young University, and I got to a point where I just couldn't ignore my attractions anymore. And I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore on my own. I just really needed someone to help. And so this is my roommate Craig here from years ago. We're not roommates anymore. He's very married, has very many children. We were roommates at the time, and I just knew I had to tell him that I was gay. But that was a really scary thing for me to do. And I tried to come out to a couple people over about a 3 or 4 month period. And every time I got closer, I just got so nervous, I felt like I was going to throw up. And so I would chicken out and I wouldn't do it. And there's this very specific feeling I get when I know I'm supposed to come out, like I know it's time. And I kept getting that feeling, but I just kept pushing it away. And so one night, my roommate Craig and I were on a walk, and I just got that feeling. I just knew I had to do it, but I was so terrified. And I asked him if we could sit down on the grass to talk. We were walking through Kiwanis Park, just not too far from here. And I hemmed and hawed for a couple minutes. I remember looking down at the grass and slowly pulling out blades of grass, but I just couldn't tell him. I was just so nervous. And so I pushed aside the feelings of wanting to vomit. And I finally told him this phrase I stole from a blog I had read. And I said, for as long as I can remember, I've been more attracted to men than women. And he responded really well with a lot of love and kindness. And then I told him, I said, Craig, I understand if you don't want to be my roommate anymore. And he said, why wouldn't I want to be your roommate? You're the same person you've always been. And for me, that was the beginning of my healing and my self-acceptance and my getting rid of the shame I've been carrying for so long. Knowing that I could tell someone this thing about me and they were going to say, this doesn't change anything. And I had such a good positive experience with my first coming out, and that is not the case for everyone. Some people worry that they're going to be rejected and then actually experience that worry. That actually happens. what I've noticed is for the majority of LGBTQ people, when they come out, it's not nearly as bad as they had hoped, as they had expected or feared, but that can be the case. So I have a picture here of my friend Leanne. She's the last woman I tried to date. We are not married, so it did not work out. But we are still incredibly close friends. We just talked yesterday. When I was 29 years old, that's when Leanne and I were trying to date, and we finally just decided to part as friends. She knew I was gay, and she knew everything that was going on. And after we had decided to just be friends, she called me one night, and we were living in different cities. I was living in Arizona, and she was living here in Utah. And she just called me out of the blue one night to ask me how I was doing. And my roommate at the time didn't know I was gay, and we had paper-thin doors. And so I walked out of the house and walked 2 blocks down the road to sit by a park. And I sat on a curb so we could talk in private. And she asked me how I was doing. I said, well, I kind of have a crush on someone. And she said, oh, who is it? And I said, oh, well, his name is, and she knew I was gay, but for some reason it was so much harder for me to say, there's this guy with a name and I like him. That was a harder thing to say than to say I was gay. This just made it so much more real. And I remember crying with Leanne as we talked on the phone and just telling her everything I was feeling. And, you know, we know that people have this thing that we call a righting reflex, where people just want to just naturally fix things. You know, as I talked about all my problems and all my fears, Leanne didn't try and fix any of that. As I cried, she just cried with me. She sat with me in my pain. As Brene Brown would say, you know, I was in a hole and she climbed down in the hole with me. And so often that's what our LGBTQ loved ones, what our LGBTQ clients need, is just someone who's just going to be with them in that pain, not anyone who's going to try and fix things. So shortly after this experience with Leanne, I felt an impulse to come out on my blog. I've been blogging for a couple of years just about funny things that happened in my life. It was a humor space. And actually, I'm sure people who read my blog now, it's very LGBTQ focused, and I go back to the original post, are like, why is this such a blog about nothing but crazy things that happen? Anyway, so I decided to come out on my blog. And this was a very scary thing for me to do, because I'm the only Ben Schilaty on the internet. I'm very Googleable. And I knew that once I put that information out there, I couldn't take it back. But I still felt really moved to do that. I was visiting my parents during Christmas when I did that. I hadn't told hardly anyone that I was doing, just the people who were mentioned in the post. And as soon as I posted it, I turned off my phone and I told my parents, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I don't want to think about what I just did. So we went and watched the new version of Annie, the 2014 version of Annie in the theater, so I could escape reality for a little bit. And that was lovely. And then I got home and I turned on my phone and I shared the link on Facebook before I turned off my phone. And so as soon as I turned on my phone, it started ringing. And a friend from high school called me to tell me that she had read my post and just to tell me how proud she was of me. And then my phone just kept dinging and dinging and dinging. And I got tons of text messages and voicemails and emails and Facebook messages and Facebook comments just from friends and loved ones expressing their love and support of me. And there was something I experienced that day that I hadn't expected to experience. As I went through all the people who had liked the post and who had commented, I thought, oh, she knows I don't have to lie to her anymore. He knows I can be myself around him. And just being able to come out was such a freeing experience. And there was this weight came off of me that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. And as my post started to get shared around, I started to get emails from strangers. And they would say, almost all of them said the same thing. They would say, I'm gay and I'm Mormon too, and no one knows. I don't know what to do. And so that led me to starting a support group in Tucson, because I thought, I'm the only gay Larry I know about in this whole city, and statistically that can't be the case. So just a couple things about my family. These are my parents, Buzz and Jenny Schilaty. This is them on the day they got married, just as handsome as always today. My parents are the most loving, affirming people on the planet, and I am not using hyperbole when I say that. My parents have never said one rude thing to me. They never said one rude thing to me growing up, like even in jest. I was just told I was wonderful and amazing all the time, and I believed it, and hopefully it's true, because I still believe it. And so I knew when it was time to come out to them that they were going to be fine. Like, I knew they were going to love me and accept me, and I knew I could come home and say, hey, this is my boyfriend, we're going to get married, and they would say, welcome home, son. Who's this guy? He's our son now, too. Like, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that would happen. But that wasn't the choice I was making. And so I came out to my parents when I was 23, And it was a really nerve-wracking thing to do, even though I knew they were going to respond well. And they did respond well. They responded with love and kindness, but they were not prepared for this conversation. I had not given them any build-up at all. And so my mom said, "Do you think it's a phase?" And I said, "I hope so." And then my dad said, "Well, you're probably better off being single because being married is hard." And a typical dad response that things could be worse, so we're grateful for what you have. And I just didn't really want to talk to them about it because I knew they didn't get it. And so I purposely, after like 10 minutes of talking, I went into my room and called a friend so that they came in and talked to me. I wouldn't be available. And my mom actually poked her head a couple times. I'm like, "Sound like I'm on the phone." And I remember the next day my mom said, "Well, you know, Ben, you probably just haven't dated very much. Maybe if you dated more, you would see that you are attracted to women." And she was speaking out of the goodness of her heart. She just didn't understand. And so about once a year for the next 7 years, my parents would say, "So how's the whole same-sex attraction thing going?" And I would say, "Good." And that was all we ever said about it. And then when I was 30, I just couldn't hold it anymore. I was visiting them. I just like unloaded years of unsaid things onto them. My mom said this. She said, "Ben, we're not just on your side, we're with you 100%. If you need to marry a man, you and he will always be part of our family." And I knew that, like I'd known that for 7 years, but hearing my mom actually say those words and explicitly tell me that she was on my side no matter what I chose, she was going to be on board with that, was the gift that I needed from her. And so often we can often need to be communicated explicitly as well. So this is my friend Paul from Tucson. He's the one who co-founded the support group with me in Tucson. And we saw a lot of homophobic things happen that really worried us and troubled us. And so Paul one day said, "We have to do something about this." His words were to stamp out homophobia. And so what he decided to do was he invited 8 friends over to my house one night so that he could just like tell his story as a bisexual Latter-day Saint. And so the 10 of us sat in a circle in my living room, and Paul told his story for about 20 minutes. Then he let people ask him questions, and it was beautiful. People had so many questions, so many things they wanted to know, and finally we were having this open dialogue, a place to have these discussions. And it was such a cool experience that Paul's like, "Can we do that again next week?" And I said, "Of course." So we invited a different group of friends. And same thing, he shared a story for 20 minutes, and then we let people ask questions, and then at the end of the night, we went around the room, and everyone in the room shared a takeaway from the night. And often the takeaway wasn't anything that had been said, but something that had been felt or experienced. And so Paul said, "Ben, you should share your story too the next time." And so we started calling these nights ally nights. As more people joined the support group, we would rotate who would speak. We did these all over Tucson. We did dozens and dozens of them. And for the first time, members of my Latter-day Saint community were having discussions, open discussions about LGBTQ topics. And church leaders came, and lay members came, and it was just such a beautiful thing to experience. And to really feel empowered that by sharing our stories, we were going to be increasing the understanding of people, and they would be better for the people in their lives. And this happened more than once, where someone would come to an ally night, and the next day Ivan texted me and came out to me. And because I come to ally night, I knew what their stories in a way that will increase the kindness and compassion in our communities. So this is a picture of me at BYU. I came back to BYU as a grad student. I was asked to be part of an LGBTQ working group that had a number of campus administrators on it and 9 LGBTQ students. And I was one of the campus-wide LGBTQ and SSA student forum. And so on this forum, we had an L, a G, a B, and a T. And I was lucky enough to be the G. And we had a morning session, an afternoon, and an evening session so that as many people could come as possible. And they were standing room only. The auditoriums were just packed. There were people sitting on the floors, and it was really wonderful. And I remember after the first session, the moderators asking everyone to thank us for sharing our stories. And there just being this immediate standing ovation. And I just started to cry, because never in a million years I think I'd be able to openly share my story at BYU and then be applauded for it. And there's a real power that comes when people feel like they can share their stories. And we're going to come back to this moment later on in this presentation. So now I'm going to give you guys a time to do some think, pair, share. I'm an educator, so we're going to do some think, pair, share. So I want you guys to think for just a minute about these instances. Think about a time when you felt like you mattered. Think about a time when you felt marginalized. It's interesting to me that I felt both of these things at BYU. Now think about a time when you were so nervous to tell someone something that you thought you might fall in. Right, just take about 30 seconds just to think about that. All right, now what I'd like you guys to do is in your small pairs or trios, just take about 2 minutes to share some of these times with the people around you. I'll have a couple people share with the group. All right, take about 20 seconds to wrap up.
Until I learned
All right, I hear a lot of great conversations happening and a lot of wonderful things being shared. Let's go ahead and wrap up. All right, can I get a volunteer to share the first item? Think about a time when you felt like you mattered. Who'd like to share? Please, loud and proud, please.
My daughter was going through a really difficult time.
Yeah, I'm actually going to hand you the mic just so everyone can hear.
My daughter was going through a really difficult time in her life, and she was able to tell me about that. She woke up in the morning and I knew something was wrong, and she was able to tell me, and I was able to get her help that she needed. So being able to have that with her, I felt like it really mattered in her life.
So you mattered because your daughter needed you.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, now think about a time when you felt marginalized. Who'd like to share? Please.
I was serving a mission, an LDS mission, and I served my mission in Guatemala, and I was working with a family, and the husband just started saying, and the elders were there as well, right, which are the male missionaries, and so we were working with this family, and he started talking about Adam and Eve, and then basically just started bringing up any scripture from the Bible that was like kind of confusing for me with regards to women, and the elders weren't saying anything, and I felt so small, but also so outraged. And it was a really uncomfortable experience.
Thank you, Savannah. So you were feeling marginalized as a woman, and then the males there who should have been your allies stayed silent. Okay, thank you. All right, so now think about a time when you were so nervous to tell someone something that you thought you might vomit. This is the more vulnerable of the three. Anybody like to share? Yes.
Okay, so I'm queer, and I'm very familiar with that feeling, and I describe it akin to, like, I'm approaching someone that I'm hoping will respond well, and it felt like stepping out onto a glass walkway and not sure if the glass was gonna hold me. You know, that fear of, I don't know if my world's about to shatter or not, but I'm really, really hoping that this person will be there to support me. And I had a variety of responses to that, but I think as time went on, that feeling of wanting to vomit got less and less. And I don't know, like, it was a really humbling experience.
Thank you so much for sharing, and you know, that analogy of walking out onto a glass walkway, not knowing what's going to happen and what's going to happen with your world after. You know, these truly are scary and terrifying experiences when someone is sharing something so vulnerable. And so my invitation to you is, as you think about your own experiences, feeling like you matter, feeling like you're marginalized, feeling so nervous to tell someone something that you might actually throw up, you know, these are the experiences that your clients have when they're coming to you. So what can you do to make sure that the people who you are talking with know that they matter? What can you do to make sure the people you're working with know that they're not going to be marginalized? And what can you do to make sure that if someone is coming to you in a situation where they're so nervous that they feel like they might throw up? You know, what can you do to ease that, to make them feel more comfortable? Because as clinicians, you likely will be the first or one of the first people that someone will come out to. And that is a really beautiful and special experience. And so if you can respond in an appropriate way, that will build their confidence and help them be able to come out to the people who are actually involved in their daily lives. So I just want to go in and give you guys some specific things to think about and to take with you. So the first thing I want to talk about is gay-straight alliances. The data I have here is a little old. These are from like 2010, 2011, but the principles still stand. So there are thousands of gay-straight alliances around the country. And being a member of a gay-straight alliance is associated with better academic achievement, better interpersonal relationships, more comfort with one's sexual orientation, and personal empowerment. Being part of a GSA can be really important to LGBTQ teens. And I like this next point. So interestingly, students who did not attend GSA meetings experienced similar outcomes to those who did attend. And so there's something that happens, even if you don't attend some kind of support club for LGBTQ people, but just knowing that it exists can do so much for one's mental health, okay? And so, you know, I don't know what this looks like in your spheres of influence, but knowing that there is LGBTQ support, even if someone doesn't access that support, can increase the mental health outcomes of LGBTQ teens. And then this point at the bottom, GSA participants who experience high levels of LGBT school harassment may be at greatest risk for lifetime suicide attempts. So there's this pendulum of, okay, I'm supported and loved, but then even when I'm supported and loved, I'm so rejected. That can be one of the hardest things to experience. All right. So I have a bunch of information that I took from the Human Rights Campaign. You don't have to like the Human Rights Campaign, but I like a lot of the work they do, and I really like some of the materials that they put out. This comes from a resource guide to coming out. So this is for individuals who are considering coming out. This is kind of a way to give them resources. And I like what it says here. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. It means that if you are scared, you do the thing you're afraid of anyway. Right? Coming out is truly a brave experience. Coming out and living openly as a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or supportive straight person is an act of bravery and authenticity. Now, coming out as an ally is not the same experience as coming out as an LGBTQ person, but there are still similar feelings associated: fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, nervousness, and even coming out as an ally is an act of bravery. So whether it's the first time ever or the first time today, coming out may be the most important thing you will do. You will do all day. Talk about it. So some things for you clinicians. So throughout the coming out process, it's normal to have these kinds of feelings: feeling scared, relieved, confused, proud, vulnerable, uncertain, empowered, brave, exhilarated, affirmed. So imagine having a client in your office who at the same time is feeling empowered and scared, who at the same time is feeling confused and brave. You know, if you have a client who's going through a roller coaster of emotions as they're going through the coming out process, that is normal. And don't expect them to just have an upward trajectory of going from feeling sad to suddenly feeling good. You know, there are a lot of complex emotions that come with being so vulnerable and sharing something so personal. And then this part where it says, decide and tell others. Most people come out because sooner or later, they can't stand hiding who they are anymore. They want their relationships to be stronger, richer, more fulfilling, and more authentic. You know, and I think this is beautiful, wanting to have better relationships as a reason to come out. When I came out, it was because I had no other choice. Like, I just wasn't going to survive if I didn't. Like, I just wasn't thriving, and it was something that I had to do. The way I describe it is I feel like I was hanging from a pole, and I was just trying to hold on, but my hands were hurting and my arms were aching. And I was either going to let go from that pole, or someone was going to have to stand under me to help hold me up. And luckily, I had friends and family who were willing to do that. Not everyone is as lucky as I was. So be prepared when you talk to LGBTQ clients. They're going to go through a mixture of these emotions, and they might feel brave one day and then scared the next. And be ready for those mixtures of that mixture of emotions. All right, some more from the resource guide to coming out. So there are risks to coming out. It's not just an easy process. Here are some of the risks. Not everyone will be understanding or accepting. Family, friends, or coworkers may be shocked, confused, or even hostile. Some relationships may permanently change. You may experience harassment or discrimination. Your physical safety may be at risk. Some young people, especially those under age 18, may be thrown out of their homes or lose financial support from their parents. So luckily, these extremely negative outcomes are being experienced less and less here in our culture and in Utah Valley. Teens are being kicked out of their houses less and less. So these really negative things are not happening as much as they were, but they're still happening. And even if extremely negative things are happening, negative things are still happening. I have a close friend who's in his mid-20s. He recently came out to his parents, and his parents knew enough to say the right things, but they didn't really feel what they were saying. So they said, "Son, we love you, we care about you, we support you. Also, this has changed our relationship. We don't really know you anymore, and we're not even sure we can trust you." And so they knew the things to say, but it was still such a jarring experience that they said a lot of things that weren't necessarily the right things, but were still honest things. And so these are the kinds of things that your clients are going to be experiencing. And for most LGBTQ folks, the coming out process is worse in their head than it ends up being in reality. But that is not always the case. And sometimes it can be worse. And these fears you've had for years, when those fears become reality, that can be such a terrifying thing. And then this is a piece of advice to someone considering coming out. You can get a sense of how accepting people will be by the things they say or don't say. When LGBT-related issues come up, try to bring them up yourself by talking about an LGBT-themed movie, TV character, or news event. If a person's reactions are positive, chances are he or she will be more accepting of what you have to tell them. So someone who's in the closet who's considering coming out is listening. We're listening intently to the signals that you're sending about LGBTQ folks. So we need to be very careful that everything that we say about LGBTQ people is loving and kind and affirming. Because if you're in a group of 10 people, statistically, there's going to be an LGBTQ person in that room. And so we just need to be aware of the people that we're talking to. And often people will ask me, well, what if I think someone is gay or transgender, but they haven't come out? What can I do to help them come out? Should I ask them? And I almost always say no, I wouldn't recommend asking them. That's usually not the right thing to do. But you can signal you're a safe person to talk to. And the way that we talk about LGBTQ people in natural, organic, and positive ways, the more likely someone will feel comfortable to tell us when they're ready. Right, so a few more things from the resource guide. So it's normal to want or hope for positive reactions from the people you tell. So here are the reactions people are hoping for: acceptance, support, understanding, comfort, reassurance that your relationship won't be negatively affected, confidence your relationship will be closer, acknowledgement of your feelings, and love. So these are very general principles. So what acceptance is going to look like in your lives with your clients, and that's going to depend on you. And what is understanding or comfort going to look like? What is love going to look like? These are the kinds of things that LGBTQ people tend to be looking for when they come out. Right? So a person who has just had someone come out to them often feels this way. And look at these complex emotions that someone could feel: surprised, honored, uncomfortable, scared, unsure how to react, supportive, disbelieving, relieved, curious, angry, anxious, and I think the most common, unsure what to do next. I've experienced almost all of these emotions as I've had friends come out to me. Sometimes I'm genuinely surprised. Sometimes I'm relieved that they're finally telling me. And sometimes I'm really shocked, like it wasn't something that I was expecting. And this recently happened with a friend of mine who is transgender. I just didn't know that they were transgender. I had no idea. And so when they told me, I just didn't really know what to say because I was so surprised. Luckily, I'd given enough presentations like this that I kind of had a mental checklist of questions to ask. And so I just went through those questions and we had a really beautiful conversation. I'll tell you a little more about that conversation when we go through possible questions to ask. Okay, so continuing on this resource guide to coming out. So these are typically the stages that someone experiences in coming out. So the first stage that should be coming out, not coming up. Oh, sorry, opening up. Yeah, opening up to yourself. The period when your journey is beginning. When you're asking yourself questions, moving toward coming out to yourself, and perhaps making the decisions to tell others. This is a lot of self-reflection, self-introspection, likely taking quizzes online, titled "Am I Gay?" Those kinds of things. And then the coming out phase, which is the period when you're actively talking for the first time about your sexual orientation or gender identity with family, friends, coworkers, classmates, and other people in your life. And if LGBTQ folks don't anticipate they have accepting people in their life, the people they're going to reach out to are often strangers online or mental health professionals. Okay, and then living openly. The ongoing phase after you've initially talked with the people closest to you about your life as an LGBT person, and are now able to tell new people that come into your life fluidly, where and when it feels comfortable or appropriate, when and where it feels appropriate to you. So I'm very out. Like if you know anything about me, you know that I'm gay. But I still meet new people who don't know, and so I still like coming out with something that I continually have to do. And luckily, when people ask about my life, I have enough LGBTQ related things happening in my life that just comes up naturally and organically. I also wear a rainbow ring, which helps out as well. But I will be coming out for the rest of my life. It's something that I will repeatedly have to do, and sometimes that can feel exhausting. And so, even if you have a client who is out to family and friends, they might still be feeling minority stress. They might still be feeling worn out by the fact that they're part of a marginalized group in our society. Okay, so now to some questions that you can ask. So I love saguaro cacti, having spent 5 years in Arizona. Here's a picture of me hugging a cactus. I love hugging cacti. And so people often ask me what the key is to hugging a cactus. I tell them you need to make contact without applying pressure. And that's the same advice I gave when talking to someone who comes out to you. Make contact, but don't apply pressure. Right? So here's some ways you can make contact. And I would always recommend asking for someone's consent to share part of their story. So I would say, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm honored that you told me, thank you. Is it okay if I ask a couple questions? I think asking for someone's consent to ask more information is very appropriate and helpful. So we'll start off with this principle. The most important thing you can do is listen. and make them feel welcome. So what listening and making someone feel welcome looks like in your individual spheres and in your individual positions will vary. But that's what we need to do. We need to listen to someone who's coming out to us and then make sure that they feel welcome. And so then thank them for trusting you. And here's some good questions to ask. I'd love to hear more about your experience. What has this been like for you? And so when my friend, who I had known for years, told me that they identify as transgender, I was like, thank you for telling me. I had no idea. And I'd love to hear more about your experience. Like, what has it been like for you being transgender? And then this question, how can I support you? Like what can I do? What does being gay, bi, trans, SSA, which is an acronym for same-sex attraction, what does this mean to you? And then shortly after your first conversation, I would always say, what else would you like to talk about? Is there anything you want to say that you haven't gotten to say yet? And if someone is brave enough to share their sexual orientation or gender identity, they often have things they want to say and share that they don't get to say and share. And it's awkward to bring it up repeatedly. So if you can just open the door and say, thank you for bringing that up last week. I appreciate your openness and honesty. Was there something else you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to say last time? And they might say no. But they might also say, yeah, there actually is. And if you just open the door, they might not walk through it, but that way they have the chance. So it's important to meet your clients where they are. And I'm not throwing shade at BYU. I'm going to talk about something that happened at BYU to give you an idea of what I mean when I'm talking about meet your clients where they are. So this panel I talked about earlier, a flyer was designed for this panel. This was the original flyer. This lovely pastel rainbow. I thought it was really beautiful. Before the flyer was printed, we had a huge controversy about it that we called Rainbow Gate. Because some people were very uncomfortable that there was going to be a rainbow on the flyer. And so there were the 9 LGBTQ students in this working group, we had some lengthy and heated discussions with administrators about whether or not there should be a rainbow on this flyer. And it was more the administrators who didn't feel comfortable than us students. And what we finally got to was, a rainbow can be seen as a political symbol. It can also be very uncomfortable to someone who is in the closet, who isn't really okay with their orientation, who doesn't feel pride in their orientation. And as we talked about, who did we want to come to this event? Do we want people who are already okay with their orientation to come? Do people who already understand LGBTQ issues? Or do we want the people who knew the least, who were the least okay? As we talked about that, a new flyer was designed, which was pretty bland, but got the message across. And so, knowing the BYU community, I think it was best for us not to have a rainbow on that flyer because we were talking to people who were not okay with that symbol. And that's still how things are at BYU in a lot of ways. I was recently on a panel in a class, and someone asked the question. They said, I see a lot of pride flags around at BYU apartments. How can that be okay? Isn't that against school policy? And I was like, well, I wear a rainbow ring. And then I told them what it meant to me, and we were able to have that discussion. And so meet your clients where they are. I self-identify as gay. I used to self-identify as having same-sex attraction. And if you were talking to 25-year-old me, and you said, Ben, you're gay, I would be like, I am not gay. I experience same-sex attraction, and I would have been very adamant about that. Now, if you talk to 37-year-old me, and you said, Ben, you're not gay. You experience same-sex attraction. I would say, how dare you? I am gay. And so I've had this huge shift in how I self-identify. Who I said that I experienced same-sex attraction, they kept referring to me as gay. That would have been very jarring and very uncomfortable for me. And so it's important that you mirror the language that someone wants to use. For me personally, self-identifying as gay has been much more healthier for me from a mental health standpoint, but it also would have been inappropriate for someone to push that on me. But having a therapist who would help me explore, what my terms and how I saw what that meant to me would have been really helpful. So meet your clients where they are. Don't push any labels on them, but be with them where they are. If you were talking to parents or families, I can't recommend enough the Family Acceptance Project. It's done through it's done through San Francisco State University, and they have done amazing research over multiple years about what happens when a family accepts or rejects an an LGBTQ person in their family. So look at these stats. Youth who are highly rejected by their families are more than 8 times as likely to have attempted suicide. They're nearly 6 times as likely to report high levels of depression, and more than 3 times as likely to use illegal drugs. More than 3 times as likely to be at a high risk for HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. Now, those are jarring numbers, and I have graphics for you just so you can see it, just so that this settles in. So if someone has, if their level of rejection is low, meaning the level of acceptance is high, they have a very low rate of suicidality and suicide attempts. Moderate rejection, a little bit higher, but high levels of rejection, almost 8 times as likely to attempt suicide. And then illegal drug use. Once again, someone who experiences high levels of rejection from their family is more than 3 times as likely to use illegal drugs. And if people are not feeling comforted and welcome in their family, they're going to go to a place where they feel comfort. They're going to go where they feel welcome, and they're going to do what they might feel they need to do to numb the pain and dissonance they're feeling. And once again, the risk for contracting HIV is 3 times higher for someone who's rejected from their family. I don't remember the exact stats, but for teens who are kicked out of their homes, who end up on the street, they end up being involved in prostitution. I think it's within 48 hours typically. And so by rejecting youth, we are really putting them in places where they can experience a lot of danger and where they can be taken advantage of. All right, and so here's what some rejecting behavior can look like. So here's some examples of rejecting behavior: hitting, slapping, or physically hurting your child because of their LGBT identity. Verbal harassment or name calling because of your child's LGBT identity. Excluding LGBT youth from family and family activities. Blocking access to LGBT friends, events, and resources. Blaming your child when they are discriminated against because of their LGBT identity. Pressuring your child to be more or less masculine or feminine. Telling your child that God will punish them because they are gay. Telling your child that you are ashamed of them or that how they look or act will shame the family. Making your child keep their LGBT identity a secret in the family and not letting them talk about it. So these are the kinds of rejecting behaviors that increase the risk of contracting HIV, increase the risk of illegal drug use, increase the risk of suicide attempts. Okay, so these are the kinds of behaviors we want to avoid. And now the positive things. Here are some things that can happen to show acceptance. So talk with your child or foster child about their LGBT identity. Express affection when your child tells you or when you learn that your child is gay or transgender. Support your child's LGBT identity even though you may feel uncomfortable. Advocate for your child when he or she is mistreated because of their LGBT identity. Require that other family members respect your LGBT child. Bring your child to LGBT organizations or events. Talk with clergy and help your faith community to support LGBT people. Connect your child with an LGBT adult role model to show them options for their future. Welcome your child's LGBT friends and partners to your home. Support your child's gender expression. Believe your child can have a happy future as an LGBT adult. These are the kinds of behaviors we want to help parents have, because this will help increase the safety and happiness and thriving of their child. So I've got a graphic. Here's the graphic. So if this is stats that show that youth believe they can be happy as an adult, as an LGBT adult. Okay, so if a family is extremely accepting, 92% feel they can have a happy adulthood. And yet if the family isn't accepting at all, only a third believe that they can be happy and successful as LGBT adults. Right? So the more we can help family be loving and accepting and kind, the more we're going to increase the mental health outcomes of their youth. So just on a personal note, this is a picture of me with my friend Jeremy in Tucson. He's gay and a very dear friend of mine. I'm one of the first people that he came out to, and we spent many hours going on walks in Tucson as he told me his story. And Jeremy went from a place of self-hatred to a place of acceptance and thriving. His family is super welcoming and kind, and even his church community is as well. And I have this poem here by Carolyn Pearson that really describes how I felt and how I think a lot of LGBTQ people have felt. I think honestly, just people in general. I don't think this is unique to LGBTQ people. So eliciting the idea of a candle, the poem goes, I dim, I have no doubt. If someone blew, I would go out. And then the poem continues, I did not, I must be brighter than I thought. And we can be the people who help kindle that flame, who help light that fire, so that someone doesn't feel that if there's just a slight breeze, they're going to go out. I have a couple of resources listed here that I would recommend. I'm going to do a little self-promotion. So I have a book called A Walk in My Shoes, Questions I'm Often Asked as a Gay Latter-day Saint. This is written for a Latter-day Saint specific audience. I wrote specifically for for straight people to understand the LGBTQ people in their lives. I'm very proud of it. I think it's great. So I would recommend this to straight members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Charlie Bird, who I will not invite up to do a flip because he told me not to, wrote a book called Without the Mask. He was the famed Cosmo the Cougar who went viral a couple years ago for his amazing dance moves. And he wrote the book that he wished he had as a teen. So I would recommend Charlie's book for any LGBTQ Latter-day Saint. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Richard Osler, who is straight, has a podcast and a book called Listen, Learn, and Love. In his book and his podcast, he interviews hundreds of people from all different areas of different levels of acceptance of being LGBTQ to different lifestyle choices. And I think it's a great resource. His podcast is like sweeping lifelong journeys. Charlie and I also have a podcast I have here listed at the bottom called Questions from the Closet. It's once again Latter-day Saint specific, but each episode we discuss a question that we commonly get asked as LGBTQ Latter-day Saints, and we typically have a guest on to discuss the question with us. So those are the Latter-day Saint specific resources. For just general LGBTQ therapy, I highly recommend LGBTQ Clients in Therapy by Joe Court. It is phenomenal, and it will give you it's thick, but it will give you lots of specific advice on how to work with LGBTQ clients in therapy. I would highly recommend that book. It's paperback, it's not even super expensive. And then just to understand the LGBTQ experience, I'm so sorry, the E got cut off. It's actually the Velvet Rage, not the Velvet Rag. so it is the Velvet Rage. But it's about the pain that gay people experience growing up in a society that's built for straight people. And this is not religion specific. And honestly, when I read this book, I was like, I thought just gay Mormons had it hard, but actually just gay people have it hard. Like it's hard no matter what. And so if you just want to understand the LGBTQ experience in America, I would highly recommend The Velvet Rage. Velvet Rage. And other resources, your clients. Let your clients teach you. Let them share their experiences with you. Because the most important experience for you is the experience of the person you're talking to. I would also recommend LGBTQ themed movies and books. Simple movies like Love, Simon is absolutely amazing to just get a glimpse of what it's like. And then your family members and friends. If you have LGBTQ family members and friends, well, I know you do, everyone does. If you feel comfortable, ask for their consent and then ask for them to share their stories with you. As you learn their stories, you might hear some hard truths and some really tough things they experienced, but they're going to be an absolutely amazing resource. That is the end of my presentation. So I'll just take the last, how much time do we have? 15 minutes. Just answer any questions that you guys have. So thank you. I'll take the last 15 minutes to answer any questions you guys have. Or if you have no questions, I'll just let you go to the bathroom now. Yeah, please. Here, I'll give you the mic.
I think I'm struggling a little bit. I have some LGBTQ clients, and I think I'm struggling because my paradigm was, okay, so I read some books on same-gender attraction, but that's not exactly your paradigm. One of them, their paradigm is, I just reject all hyperfemininity. That scares the pants out of me and all this sexual stuff. I should also say I just got a text from Scott Christopherson saying he's so excited that I'm here listening to you.
Oh, Scott's amazing.
He is amazing.
He was on one of our episodes.
I know.
What are the stages of coming out? It's really good.
anyways, so she's more of a person who is just a rejection of, I don't feel comfortable with sex, I don't feel comfortable with hyperfemininity, and that's it. There isn't an attraction to other genders, anything like that. And another one, he just hates himself so much, I should say they hate themselves so much, that they doesn't feel comfortable identifying as male in his body, but after taking on a new identity, they start to reject that as well because that self-hatred is just so permeating. So I guess I just sometimes feel like this feels like your story is really good and it's really questions some of my biases, which I need.
You're welcome.
But I also feel like there's so much more, and I don't know where to put that question because I feel stuck sometimes in helping these clients. Am I helping them with self-hatred, or is there something more I should be looking at? Because they claim they're LGBTQ, but as we dig into it, it seems different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I do have some thoughts, great questions, and I would be hesitant to say like what you should do with specific clients because every client is different and unique. As you were talking about my story is really tidy. I have a very tidy story, and so it's digestible, especially for conservative religious folks. I've got this tidy story and living a life I think they would feel fairly comfortable with. Most people's stories aren't that tidy and don't fit into a box like that. What I'm hearing you say is, your clients are really struggling. They're trying to figure themselves out. They're not thriving. And so, what do we do? How do we help them thrive? What I would say is this is a very long process. And for a lot of people, figuring out who they are, especially if they're teens, can be a very long process. And so, what I would recommend is just kind of like holding up a mirror to that, not a physical mirror, like a metaphorical mirror. And just like reflecting back the things that they're experiencing and the things that they're saying. And just being in a place where you can let them hate themselves as male, and then also let themselves be uncomfortable with this new identity they're taking on, and then try on a new identity. Just let them be in a space of fluidity and just be that safe person that they can talk to. And so I would say, that is the most important thing. And people will come to a different understanding of their identity as time goes on. When I first went to therapy to change my orientation when I was 23, I said, I'm more attracted to men than women. I want to increase my attractions to women. So that wasn't possible for me. But also I approached my therapist with a goal that wasn't possible. And also with some dishonesty. I was saying that I was attracted to women when I really wasn't. And so, but I didn't end up trusting this therapist because he wasn't that great anyway, but anyway. I had later greater therapists. So I would say, let them just be where they are. If they're not sure, if they're feeling a lot of self-hatred, that's fine. If they come and say, I'm gay, but it turns out they're not gay, they just don't like femininity, that's okay too. And just let them explore that. Just expect it to be a long journey is I guess what I would say. Yeah.
So I've always been a really loud and proud self-proclaimed ally to the community. I grew up in Seattle like you, and there I just have always been an ally. It's just never even a question for me. But I have noticed as time has gone on that I've become kind of more angry at the injustice that I see or microaggressions towards the community that I see. And I want to, I know you probably see that a lot working at the Honor Code office in the BYU. My question is kind of how do you stand up for the community in a kind way without seeming like you're judging them or that, you see them, you do respect them less? How do you correct those things, especially in a professional setting without angering anybody?
That's a good question. And I just want to say allies are so important because if I talk about LGBTQ rights, people can accuse me of being self-interested. I'm doing this for me. But an ally can say, well, this isn't out of self-interest. This is because I really, really care about this group. So just a couple of principles that have helped me in my advocacy that maybe can help in yours. One of my principles is you can't teach someone who doesn't want to be taught. So, I look at the situation, I think, well, okay, is this the time for me to share use my energy to talk to someone who's just not gonna accept what I have to say? So that's one of the ways I gauge, is this worth my energy? Sometimes I'm just tired and I don't really have the time to correct things or stand up for things. Just recently, I was visiting my parents and two missionaries from my parents' congregation came to visit, and they were super wonderful and super kind. But they're just kids, and they were saying all kinds of unintentionally rude things about me being gay, like trying to understand. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, how many of these do I correct right now? And then as this missionary was talking, he said, I've got a friend who struggles with the same thing you have. And he said, is that even the right way to say it? And I said, for me, no. Like, I'm not struggling with being gay. I struggle with people struggling with me being gay. Like, I don't struggle at all with being gay. And so I could tell that he was ready to learn. And we had a great 30-minute conversation where, he said, oh my gosh, I learned so much in just these 30 minutes. So I would say invest your time where it's going to make the most difference and have the most impact. Because we can't be policing things. I would also say the internet is often not a great place to help people understand things. So I would just personally just avoid comment sections. But when you are interacting with a client maybe who might be saying homophobic things, once again, I would say hold a mirror for them, reflect back to them what they're saying, and let them hear it. And then I would say, ask for their consent and say, can I share my perspective about this? And then just talk from a personal perspective. And I found the most, for me as an advocate and as an ally to other LGBTQ folks, the thing that I do the most is I really try and talk from a personal perspective, from personal experience, because people can't push back against that because it's my lived experience. And so if someone's saying, I don't think transgender people are real. Like, you're either a man or a woman, and you have what you have, and you just, this must be a mental health problem if someone says that they're transgender, which I've heard people say. And what I said in this specific instance is I said, I have a number of transgender friends, and this is what I have heard them say, and the experiences that I have heard them have, and just by sharing experiences, I found that to be probably the most effective way. Yeah. You're just closer, so.
So we've got a couple underage clients, minors, who identify as LGBTQ, and some of them have come out to their parents and they're trying to get more involved in the community, like joining some support groups and stuff like that. And I know some of our team members have talked to the parents or attempted to talk to the parents, but we just weren't getting any response. They literally just ignore our emails. What do we do?
Oh, if someone is ignoring emails, I have not figured out a way to get them to not ignore them. So, I can't help with that. Honestly, it sounds like what you guys are doing is perfect. It sounds like you're already on the right track. You just have parents that might not be ready for the conversation. And as much as I would just wish everyone were ready right now, this is not reality. So I would say keep reaching out. I had a client when I was working at LDS Family Services. Two parents brought in their transgender daughter, who was in her teens. And they wanted their daughter to come to therapy. So I met with the parents, I told them what was going on, then I met with the daughter, and she was fine, really thriving. And so we talked for 15 minutes, and I called the parents, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm assessing. I don't think your daughter needs therapy, but perhaps you guys do. And they said, yeah, okay, we could do that. And I saw them for a couple of months, and it was really helpful and beneficial for them because they just didn't understand what their daughter was going through, and I could help them and help them cope with, grieving the loss of the life of the child they thought they had. And that's a really traumatic thing. And so, parents who are ignoring emails, they might just be busy. It's also a really scary thing that you find out your child isn't who you thought they would be. And so I would say be patient, keep reaching out, training the kids on how to come out to their parents in healthy ways. And also, if the child is okay, I invite the parents to come in and be part of that conversation so that I can help with that. But I'd say just be patient. Sounds like you guys are doing all the right things. Yeah.
So I was a little curious about your experience working at BYU. I'm not asking you to comment on like policy or any specific cases, but I guess what's your experience with working with policies that maybe aren't as conducive, especially where you have personal experience? And I feel like I've seen comments about like people attacking you about like, how could you work in the honor code office? How could you uphold the thing you swore to destroy?
You're asking those comments too.
Oh, good. And so I was curious about what your perspective on that was, and in general, what do you do about policy?
That's a great question. So I work at the Honor Code Office at BYU. As you might know, the Honor Code at BYU prohibits same-sex romantic behavior. So it is not okay if you're an LGBTQ student to have a same-sex romantic relationship or be involved in same-sex romantic behaviors. So I am very hated by a lot of people. So, you know, I'm not gay enough for the LGBTQ world, but I'm also not Latter-day Saint enough for the Latter-day Saint world. So that can be confusing. But I really love working at BYU. I really, really love it. The Honor Code director right now, Kevin Udd, he's been there for about 3 years. He did not attend BYU. He did all of his schooling outside of Utah and was a student conduct officer outside of Utah. And so when he was hired by BYU, he's like, the Honor Code office is a student conduct office, so we're going to make this a student conduct office. Like, that is what it is. And so we deal with student conduct. And you know, we're certified to do student conduct like any other student conduct administrator anywhere in the country. And you know, the main philosophy is everything we're doing is educational. Like, it is not punitive. Like, we're educating students and helping them to live the values of the university. And you know, and when I was interviewed for my job, they asked me how I would feel enforcing policies that I didn't agree with. And that was a tough question. And one of the things I said, and one of the things I feel is, if these policies are going to be enforced, I want to be the one to do it, because I have more experience. Just statistics-wise, in the last year and a half at BYU, since I started working there, and the correlation with me working there is not. There's no correlation. It's or causation. It's just that we got a new tracking system when I got hired. In the last year and a half since I got hired, we have had like 20 reports about same-sex romantic behavior. Let's see, only 7 of them were acted on because they were anonymous reports or there wasn't like enough information. So we just received the reports and did nothing with them. Out of those 7, 2 of them were the same person who self-reported twice. And then 5 of them, I think, were reports from roommates. And so, you know, in the last year and a half, we have called in 6 LGBTQ people to talk about same-sex romantic behavior. So I'm not saying that to make anyone feel good, because if you think that there are people who are like, well, you should be enforcing that policy more, or how dare you enforce your policy? Other people who would be like, well, that policy shouldn't even exist, so how dare you even talk to those 6 students? So I say that to say that, you know, there isn't a lot of that happening. There isn't a lot of reporting happening. But what I do see happening is the school has given me a lot of opportunities to be really open and vocal. So I do tons of class presentations, I speak on lots of panels, I do lots of trainings, and they have done a good job of not tokenizing me, but also utilizing me, which I really appreciate. And my boss is so great. He said, you know, a lot of people know that I work in the Honor Code office and just want to come and talk. And so I talk to anywhere from like 2 to a dozen LGBTQ students every week who just like want to come in and chat. And so, you know, I hope that in the end, like my presence there helps reduce the fears that LGBTQ students have. And as far as policies go, I'm an entry-level employee, so I have no say in policies. The Honor Code is handled by the Board of Trustees. Like, even the BYU president isn't in charge of the Honor Code. So I really have no influence on the policy, but I do what I can to make sure that LGBTQ students feel loved and accepted and feel like they have a place where they can come talk to someone who gets what's such to them. Yeah, are we out of time?
Yeah.
We are out of time. Thank you so much for your participation today. And you guys I have full faith and confidence that you'll be able to do a lot to help the LGBTQ folks in your life. So thank you.